To this day, hundreds of women have gone missing, and Afrin human rights abuses are occurring under the Turkish rule. Little girls no longer have the freedom to go to school without wearing a headscarf, whereas before, it was up to the individual woman if she wanted to wear a headscarf or not. And yeah, that was really heartbreaking. The jewel of Rojava had been ripped away by the dark hands of fascism. And then I decided to go to the mountains to fight more.
And how did it feel? I know you've gone into, but can you describe the feeling that you're going through as you're walking out of the city and walking away and seeing it for the last
Like that loss, I'd lost, loads of friends and families to war and all kinds of things, but that loss was so heavy. I don't think I'll ever get over it. I think I'll always be grieving. Part of me will always be grieving until for Afrin, for Rojava, because it did symbolise everything that the revolution was. This joy, this beauty, this coming together of people of all walks of life, women's freedom, young people, children's freedom. And it was, like I said, brutally crushed by a NATO-backed regime. And I think there's also this thing as, this inherited anger that comes from, my grandmother's, this rage that as a woman you build up over time. As a working class person, you build up over time, years of being mistreated or told you're worthless. All that gets stored inside you. And then when it bursts open, as it did for the women and the people of Rojava who'd been told they were nothing, they were worthless, they were Kurds, Syrians, not peasant Arabs, by the regime, it just burst and there's no stopping it. You can't put a lid back on that anger once it's out. And that's when I made up my mind I was going to fight more. It was like the cry of all these generations, this war cry from all these generations.
can't imagine anything more powerful, to be honest. How were your experiences after that?
Well, I came back and I noticed myself really, I found myself like changed by it. I was more angry. Just everything annoyed me. Like everything made me upset. And I wanted to go to the mountains to fight. I wasn't done yet. Just because the Turkish state might have captured Afrin, I didn't want to let that, I wasn't going to let that slide, basically. So I went to the mountains, not with the PKK, but with another communist group, where I trained as a guerrilla.
And from what I hear about the area, it was just as heavily bombarded as Afrin. It was just as heavily,
Yeah,
almost annihilated. I don't know otherwise.
yeah. So when I was there, I was in the mountains of Iraqi Kurdistan. The war got hotter and hotter and hotter. It's like it was following me, kind of thing. So it started off, not too bad, and then it rapidly got worse and worse. It was being heavy. We were being bombarded almost consistently. Helicopters, drones, warcraft. But at the same time, I was among all this beauty of nature, and the Kurds have a saying that you find true freedom in the mountains. Because you have no technology. It's just you and the mountain, your comrades in the mountain. And, we used to bath in the stream. We used to carry logistics, like food, water for long distances, and then have chai out and under the sun. I saw wolves in the mountains, like these really beautiful silvery wolves, porcupines, like.
And there's whole ancient communities up around there as well, isn't there?
Yeah. There's covered in little villages, which makes the bombing even more heartbreaking because, again, the Turkish state isn't just targeting armed groups; it's targeting civilians. Innocent civilians have nothing to do with the war. There's a lot of Assyrian Christian villages up in the mountains, and they all speak Kurdish, even though they're Syrian. And they have love for their Kurdish neighbours.
But that's something I think, from everything I understand, you tend to see all throughout that region. Like the Arabs know a bit of Kurdish. Everyone knows Arabic, obviously, but even they know a bit of Assyrian. They know all, because of everything that's brought them together. That it's not a case of we learn this language and we side with these people. These are all our people. We all learn from each other, and we all.
Yeah, and our communities in the UK are a microcosm of that. Like in East London, all the slang, like that comes from everywhere. Because there is this layer of the working class that isn't dictated by those in power. But unfortunately, that again is being robbed from us as the working class gets split up and divided, and yeah.
So. Sorry.
Do you want to give it a second? See if he calms down.
It's human anyway. Why not in some fancy with fucking overhanging mics?
From Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Alex Jones. I think you should go for the Alex Jones. Like, gay frogs. Make the frogs gay.
Okay, at the end of this interview, I'll rip my shirt off.
Yeah.
There's Ralph Lauren.
Try and fight someone.
I've got a little unicorn vest. But that won't look the same. That will
No,
just look
weird.
It's a wife beater vest.
Have you seen the bit where he tries to rush that person and beat them up?
I've seen it a few times.
Yeah. Should do that to me at the end. Just
take it down. I need to get my budget up before I can do it. Well, we'll get you back on.
Yeah. There's some weird podcasts out there.
So, describing the war in the mountains, did you experience a lot of losses there yourself? How was that? It
was hard, but because you have to keep them, you're in the really tight confines then, much tighter than a battalion, where there's lots of open fields and space and stuff, even if you can't necessarily go there, or a nocta, like a point. In the mountains, sometimes you're literally under a tent together and you're in a cave or whatever, so you feel it a lot more intensely together, and it's your duty to look after everyone else as well. So you try and keep the morale up for everyone, which can be really challenging. And again, I found that again, my strength in that I could lift other people up, having that empathy.
It's the most important thing in a situation like that, is the difference between surviving and not. The morale from each other.
Absolutely. And I saw people I thought stronger than me break, and I lifted them up, even if they'd been really horrible to me early that morning. And to be able to do that, to be able to put aside them snapping at you because they're stressed and that we haven't eaten, we haven't bathed, we're running out of water because it's the dead of summer and we can't reach the war points.
Because of the bombardment?
Yeah, because of the constant drones and the warplanes. We haven't eaten in 2 days. To be able to lift someone up who's been really, grumpy and snappy and taking it all out on you and other comrades, to still reach out to them and lift them up because you understand that they're frustrated, they're upset, they're grieving, they're angry, and it's just coming out in all different ways. That takes a lot. And
it's the greatest strength of all.
Yeah. And I found for the first time pride in myself. And I also, through this thing called techno, so they have this thing called techno, which is revolutionary criticism. It has to come from a place of love. And it's kind of like deconstructing all the rubbish that you're taught how to behave, and in a way that's very individualistic, that's very, harmful to yourself and others, and then reinforce positive ways of behaving. And through techno, I learned a lot about myself. And they said, you treat yourself very badly, you talk about yourself very badly, you walk with a bad posture, like you hate yourself. What message do you think that's sending other women? And I'd never thought of it like that before. It was like a light bulb moment. They were like, every time that you say something horrible, not self-critical, but horrible about yourself, you're saying that to every other woman.
That's a very powerful thing to hear.
And yeah, it's like something changed in me. And they were like, by treating yourself in such a way, by you're saying this is how working class people should act, this is how women should act, this is all we're worthy of. But if you treat yourself with pride and stand up and stand up tall and straight, if you act in an honourable way, regardless of your gender, regardless of where you come from, if you act with honour that serves you, that serves the community, that serves people around you, you're not only lifting yourself up, you're lifting everyone else around you up. And that really changed. I think that changed my life more than anything.
So, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, like, what does so I see it a lot in my clients, and I'd see it a lot in the people I help in British society. This kind of ingrained self hatred, and it's heartbreaking. They come from like families or backgrounds or schools where they are taught from a young age you're rubbish or you're worthless and this, and then they internalize that, or even taught it through actions. So maybe not told it, but you know had their different needs neglected or different parts of them neglected, and they internalize all this self hatred. It's heartbreaking because self hatred doesn't serve anything. In fact, it serves those in power to keep those who, if they took that power from those in power, would create a better world. It serves those in power to have people hating themselves.
Absolutely. One of their greatest weapons.
Yeah.
Keeping people down. That's what it means to keep people down. So, and you've made it very clear, like the resolve. It's just I have to thank you just for that, because you've made it very clear the resolve that it takes to get through something like that and where that resolve comes from. And so, honestly, I can't think of anything else I need to ask. But you've given such a powerful image.
Thank you. But like I said, I believe that everyone has tremendous capability in them. And again, this is what I try and instill in my clients, that, you know, you have the immense power in your hands. Everyone has immense power in their hands, and you have the choice. So there's after I came back, I studied psychotherapy and psychology because I wanted to use that as an avenue to help people. Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor, wrote this beautiful book called Man's Search for Meaning about his time in the camps and the psychology of it. He said between stimulus and response, there's always time for choice. So between something happening and how you respond, you always have the power to choose how you respond and how you think and how you feel and behave. It's really difficult because you might be really caught up in anger or sadness or shock, but you do have that choice once you bring yourself down. And he talked about how, even in the camps, you saw acts of kindness, even amongst all this horror, you could choose to act in a way that was kind. And that is obviously a complete opposite of what the Nazi regime wanted or espoused.
So, what made you decide to come back?
So my gallstones had been rattling around inside for a while now, and they were causing me more and more problems. I was getting more and more flare-ups. So again, another wonderful male. I had another male commander who was a huge inspiration to me, and me and him bonded instantly. And he told me his life story. He'd been tortured in the prisons in Turkey for just having left-wing ideals, wanting community, being Kurdish, wanting, people to have better lives. And from a very young age, he was imprisoned and tortured. And then he became a revolutionary, and he went from village to village spreading revolutionary ideals. He went to Palestine, and he was trained in the PLO camps. There he lost the only woman he ever loved in an accident. And she was also a fighter. And, he told me his whole life story. He came back and he just dedicated his life to the struggle.
There was, from everything I've learned about that topic, there was so many people leaders and elders in the Kurdish movement that did go to support Palestine and to.
Yes, yeah.
It was very strong. I think if you look at a lot of the pictures, you'll even see even the young fighters. A lot of them wear that same keffiyeh.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing to see. And
that solidarity. Yeah. And solidarity of oppressed peoples is so important. And again, this is my objection to this kind of new liberal feminism, this TikTok feminism, because it exceptionalizes everything. And certainly there are, differences in every struggle, but the more you isolate the struggles, the worse it's going to be. What we need is people to link up, whereas they're very much, cancel culture. This thing cannot be reformed, or there cannot be any transformation. Positive transformation. It's like, well, that's not a very revolutionary way of looking at things. As a revolutionary, you look at something, and even if it's not the way you want it to be, you start working and building towards making it how you want it to be. And you bring people in. It's not, pushing people out. You want to, yeah. It is. I mean, it is basically, I think, a very reactive and reductive form of feminism. The more people are included within a movement, as left-wing feminists who want communism and want socialism, want a better world for, and anarchists, we all want a better world. The more people we have a part of that world, the better, the sooner we're going to win, the better it's going to be.
Absolutely.
Sorry, what were you? I got lost now. I'm ranting.
I was just talking about what made you were telling me about your commander.
Yeah.
And what made you, how you decided to come back.
He made the call. He made the call because my call centre getting. I was trying to say no, it's fine, and then he was like, "It's obviously not fine. Go back to Karma, have the operation." Went back. They couldn't. By then, the revolution was under attack more and more from the Turkish state. There was more of an embargo. It
was completely under siege.
Yeah. So they couldn't do the operation and said, "We're going to send you back to Europe." And Hevel Baran, the martyred commander I told you about, he was like, "Promise you'll come back." And I was like, "I promise." And then he said, "Don't forget, everyone here loves you. We all love you." And that was the last thing he ever said to me, because he was blown up in an assassination by the Turkish state agents a year later. Came back to the UK, where I was arrested by Southwark Counter-Terror Police a week before my friend was arrested. A year later, I was constantly under bail. I had to sleep under the same roof every night. And, there were all these things going back and forth.
So were you charged at that point?
No. And then a year later, they decided to drop everything because my friend, the police had completely destroyed his life. So he hadn't gone to the mountains. He'd worked in the communes and then fought against ISIS. They got him fired from his job as special educational needs teacher. They'd, dogged him for months and months and months and made his life absolutely miserable, and he died in poverty. And that's something one of many things I'll never forgive the British state for.
Do you mind if I ask what his name was?
His name was Josh Schooler. Because I had met him, his name was Bruce, which means thunder. And he was, for such a name, Thunder, he was one of the sweetest and kindest people I've ever met. And the British state not only robbed the world of someone who was just such a light in people's lives, they also robbed the world of another special educational needs teacher, if you want to think about it in practical terms, in a time when suddenly we have massive job crises, especially in education, especially in mental health.
Yeah, man, you could have passed on. I don't even want to go down that road. So yeah. We've already said it.
So yeah, he died, and then COVID happened, so they decided to drop everything. And it was, for a whole year, I'd actually wanted to go to prison. I know that sounds sick and weird, but I'd come back. I'd lost so many people. It felt wrong for me to be enjoying my life, or not enjoying my life, but because I was struggling working in a community centre, and cost of living, COVID, everything had hit. But it felt wrong with me to be out when all my friends some people never came back. So I'd been ramping up myself to go to prison and go down fighting for this cause that I believed in, and just like that, just done nothing. And then COVID happened.
Did you get any information? Like, I remember when I was speaking to Jim, he said they decided to drop the charges when his lawyers had specifically asked about like specific relations and specific conversations that had been had between security services and the Turkish state. Did you get any information from them? They didn't give you any info at all?
No, I think it was more of a political decision because I think we'd just gone into lockdown. And, you know, the first time I went to Southern Counter with Grotty, the last time I went in there, it was absolutely like the big police sergeant, and he had like this tiny school desk, like this big, and he was just like sitting over it, and like, yeah, they're obviously making cutbacks to the police as well. They've obviously made loads of cutbacks in terms of counter-terror because, you know, one of the kids from Jihadis next door went on to do the London Bridge attack, so there were obviously some hiccups there, and shows you where this country places its importance when it comes to terror. You know, this kid had an ISIS flag above his television set and was on a TV show that was called The Jihadis Next Door, allowed to walk through, whereas, you know, myself, Josh, others were being hounded constantly for being
so many cases of guys like that as well.
Yeah, for being a part of a group we were never part of. And there was no evidence at all to say that we were ever part of this certain group.
And do you think the fact that, I have to say, what they did to Josh, do you think that must have played some role in it as well?
I think they knew that, you know, it would have looked really awful. Yeah, on their side. I don't think they cared too much about public image after the Sarah Everard. You know, police literally trampled on flowers of a vigil. At the same time, I think they probably were slightly aware that probably the timing wasn't great, and also going into lockdown.
Makes a lot of sense. So having gone through all that, and been come back after going through all of that stuff, and then being on like a year on bail, worrying about whatever's gonna happen, but preparing yourself to go to jail to, like you say, fight for what you believed in. How did you find yourself after that?
Really depressed. I know that sounds sick and disgusting, but I was really down. I mean, obviously there was lockdown happening at the same time, but I had felt, why should I be out and again not enjoying my life, because I don't think at that time I allowed myself to enjoy my life. But why should I be home? Why should I be safe when so many people I loved, you know, never made it? And I continued to lose people even after I came back. And then the Rojava Revolution was under attack, and we all had to watch it unfold on the news, and being away from it and all the people I'd loved over there, that was hard as well. So yeah, like I said, I felt into like this little mini depression. I had to keep myself out of it.
No, that's probably her leaving. I might need to look up.
You want to go check?
Did she actually come in? Did you see?
I didn't see her, no.
We'll keep going for now. So, well, talking about going into a depression and all, I don't know if there's more you want to say in terms of your like, movement or development from them. But I remember talking to you, and you explained something that can be very useful. Like everything you said can be so useful to so many people, to everyone. But specifically about dealing with like trauma and depression, and how you were able to move past that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very light depression. I've been in way more depressive circumstances. I've also relapsed several times. And I started working in the community centre, and I remember seeing, like, I think I was living in Lewisham, where like the Latin for Lewisham logo is something like community is the highest form of health or something. And obviously mental health is on the rise in this country, and I could see it in the left here, and I could see it, in the communities I was working with, and it's something I'd been interested in, so I paid for my own courses and started studying it. I also got active in the Corbyn movement and then saw that fail, which was another blow. And then, I studied it, and I was then diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Not just from my time in Rojava, but from my time in childhood. But I was a lot stronger as a person when I came back than I ever had been. And my goal and my mission was then clear. I wanted to help in the community. I wanted to build in our communities. I wanted to build that power, build that strength. And it's not, again, that instant result, but it's an ongoing thing. And I had so much clarity in the way I thought and what I knew needed to happen. Like in Rojava, it didn't happen instantaneously, the revolution. It took years of building and organising, not activism, organising, talking to people, getting them to slowly come to your side, to change their minds, to challenge them gently on things, or, agree that, on different positions. It takes time to build. And obviously mental health is a big part of that, because one of the biggest, while the pandemic was going on, another huge pandemic was taking over the UK, which is the mental health pandemic, and it's something not spoken about. I think on the left, we need more resources. So there's a lot of lefties who are academics. In fact, we've got loads. We've got a dime a dozen. There are a lot of lefties who are like lecturers at universities. There are a lot of lefties who are teachers. Great. What else do we need?
A lot more.
Well, we need lefties with a whole range of skills. The more skilled we are as a movement, the best we're going to be. And I found my skill was definitely in the realm of counselling and psychotherapy. And I studied counselling and psychotherapy and the theories behind it. And at the same time, I was being diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So most people have PTSD because most people go through a traumatic incident in their lives. The NHS description of trauma is something that is a direct threat to life, which I slightly disagree with, and other psychotherapists also disagree with. It's a traumatic incident is something that's a threat to maybe perhaps not your own life, but other people around you, or your ideals. It doesn't have to be a direct threat to life for it to be traumatic, and most people will have PTSD and recover. Complex PTSD is when you have lots of trauma over short periods of time, and then it compounds. Because what's happening is, so you've got your amygdala, which is like your lizard brain, which is like the spine that goes down the front of your brain. That's responsible for flight, fight, freeze, or fawn. So the 4 Fs. I always stumble over the words there. So it's not just fight or flight, it's freeze and fawn, because, sometimes in traumatic it's totally normal to freeze, and people feel guilty, like, why did I freeze up? It's like, that's a survival mechanism that goes back from when we were evolving. When a traumatic incident that gets activated, it gets triggered, which is where the word trigger comes from. And then it kind of rears up like that, and it just sends like a blast of signals to our hippocampus. But which is our processing side of our brain on the left side, if it's too big, it can't pass. If the emotion is too big, if it's too big, too much for your brain to handle, your brain shuts down and just relies on the amygdala in order to survive, in order to get through. You just have to go on autopilot. It's too much for you to handle right there. You can't process it right there in that moment. But over time, it can be processed. If you're feeling safe and you're in a safe environment, you can process that. With CPTSD, if it's too much going through at once and too big, and it all starts to get clumped together. So people with CPTSD, unlike people with PTSD, generally don't recover. It's, but the symptoms can definitely be lowered and managed. I've seen this with other internationals, because a lot of, obviously, internationals who went there, a lot had their own. I think Jim might touch.
Sorry.
It's all right. Just mind breathing, because I'm talking like blah, 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 blah.